Joining us now, Carol Swain, a former Vanderbilt and Princeton professor and author of Be the People, A Call to Reclaim America's Faith and Promise. Also, Victor Davis Hanson, senior fellow at Hoover, and Dinesh D'Souza, author, filmmaker, host of the Dinesh D'Souza podcast. Carol, what message are we sending to young African-American boys and girls with Biden's message today?
It's a message of hopelessness, and it really encourages them to think of themselves as victims. And the millions of Blacks like myself who came out of poverty, who have been successful, we were successful because we believed in America, the American dream. And I watched systemic racism in America erode with the passage of 3 major civil rights bills. And I was able to take advantage of the opportunities that were created. And what we have today is a narrative that weakens America before the world. Our foreign enemies must celebrate what's taken place because we are destroying ourselves from within. And for Black America, there's nothing but more empty promises. People will get their hopes up. And I believe this whole focus on critical race theory is to detract from the fact that the Democratic Party's policies over the past 60 years have all failed. And because they've failed, they've decided to put the blame on white America and tell Black America that racism is permanent. There's nothing you can do about it.
Victor, Biden is doing with race exactly what the Marxists and communists always do with class, because those systems can't deliver better results than capitalism, the free market. So their leaders resorted to deception and demonization. But now it's the racial division that has to be stoked. Reaction?
Yeah, I think they understand that class never really worked in America because we were always upwardly mobile. We had a fluid, dynamic economy. But once you fixate on race, you say you're a victim no matter what your class position, then all of a sudden you can say it doesn't matter that Oprah is one of the wealthiest people in the world, or Meghan Markle talks from a $15 million estate to Oprah and a $90 million, or the Obamas are multimillionaires, because you're saying they're always going to be victimized because no matter how wealthy or how successful they are, they're going to be oppressed by somebody. And so it's a much more powerful indictment of America, because you never get over it, because race is something that should be incidental to who we are. But when you make it the signature attribute of a person and you say it's with you forever, no matter how wealthy or privileged, because after all, we have a vibrant Black middle class, a lot of privileged people. But if you say, well, they're not privileged because they're Black, then you always have some way of dividing people. And larger, very quickly, Laura, I think that Donald Trump is not in office now, and the COVID Operation Warp Speed vaccination program works, so the COVID is dying down. And people thought that as they turned attention to the Biden program, he'd leave intact the Middle East policies, the border, the economy, but he didn't. And now we've got chaos at the border, we've got inflation looming, we've got a mess in the Middle East, and I think this is a big distraction, because he can't run on what he's done, because he hasn't done very much other than cause a lot of trouble and chaos in the first 120 days. Now,
Dinesh, there was an insult that Biden launched today. He wouldn't admit it, but it was a very insulting moment. And I want you to listen to this carefully.
Young Black entrepreneurs are just as capable of succeeding given the chance as white entrepreneurs are. But they don't have lawyers, they don't have accountants, but they have great ideas.
Dinesh, what is he talking about? We've had so much success among African Americans in the country, small business owners, CEOs, entertainment. I mean, they don't have lawyers or accountants? That's insane.
Well, first of all, Laura, let's think about this. He's sort of implying, well, first of all, are there no Black lawyers? Are there no Black accountants? Does he assume that white entrepreneurs get lawyers because white lawyers come up to them and say, hey, listen, you're white, I'm going to work for you for free? What about Latino and Asian American lawyers and accountants? I mean, here's the problem with all this is that it is based upon a fantasy world idea of what entrepreneurship even is. He goes, black people have great ideas, but having a great idea is only the beginning of having a business. You can have a great idea sitting on your couch, but if you don't do anything about it, nothing's going to happen. To have a business, you have to have a great idea. You then have to organize the business, which includes finding some lawyers and some accountants. Then you have to go market the business. So what you have here by Biden is this sort of implication that somehow the structure of America is failing African Americans, but groups that succeed by figuring out what customers want and then supplying those wants and needs.
Well, and Carol, you mentioned this phenomenon earlier, and the New York Times Mara Gay proves you're right. Watch.
Americans, especially white Americans, but Americans in general, tend to be very good at forgetting history, but also tend to think that slavery was a very long time ago and that discrimination was a very long time ago. The reality is not, that's just not the case.
Carol, reaction.
Well, I can tell you that the black elite, they've benefited from everything that's taken place in America, the affirmative action programs, and everything is about them and their agendas. And their agendas don't advance the interests of black Americans. Many of the elites are Marxists. They seem to be trying to take down this country. And if they do, they will suffer along with every other American. And I believe that the black Americans and other ethnicities out there, we need to lock arms and take a stance against critical race theory. It is racist, it's un-American, it violates our civil rights laws, as well as the Equal Protection Clause. It's unacceptable, and we need to hold the Biden administration accountable. They are destroying our nation from within.
Well, got to get it at the ballot box. We're time for real quick comments from Victor and Dinesh here. Victor, really quickly, I don't see this working for Biden. I really don't. I'm not just saying that because I want to be like Pollyannish here. I don't think this works. I think when you look at Florida, Texas, the minority vote is rising for Republicans. I think they're freaking out because we have the secret sauce and they don't. Our policies work.
Yeah, I think so. If you listen to Senator Scott, you can see why they won't work. But Joe Biden he's guilty of projection, Laura, because from the corn pop stories to You Ain't Black to cocaine and junkie and the whole Obama was the first president who was clean. He's got a whole history of, I don't know what to call it, but it's racial insensitivity. So when he projects that on other people, it's very ironic and kind of disgusting.
Yeah, but Dinesh, the media whitewashed, to use I don't know if you can say that anymore, but whitewashed what Biden really thinks. I don't think he believes any of this. He's just reading what his Ron Klain okayed in the teleprompter, his chief of staff. Do you think Biden thinks that America's an awful, rotten, racist country? I actually don't think he thinks that.
The simple truth of it is, and the great unspoken fact is that all the crimes that Biden points to, all the voter suppression, all the racial terrorism, all the so-called Negro barbecues with blacks hanging from trees and people eating burgers and so on, all of this was done with the approval and support of the Democratic Party. From slavery to segregation through Jim Crow, not just the starting of the Ku Klux Klan in the 19th century, but its revival in the earlier 20th century was done by Woodrow Wilson, the first progressive Democratic president. So Biden I think he knows all this. This is all part, not of American history so much as it's part of Democratic history. And so the Democrats have gone from exploiting blacks by stealing their labor and suppressing their vote to now creating new forms of dependency in which they now focus on sort of, we'll create dependency if you will vote for us in exchange.